The alarm did not sound like a siren. On the frontier station of New Haven, the alarm sounded like the buzzing of 1 billion distinct metallic flies. It was the sound of the swarm drones. They preceded the hunters, filling the corridors with high-definition cameras and atmospheric sensors, capturing every pheromone of terror for the galactic broadcast. Kai Ren slid across the grease-stained floor of the cargo bay, his boots locking magnetically to the deck plates just as the airlock blew inward. The explosion was not designed to kill. It was designed to disorient, to create a spectacle of smoke and sparks that would look good on the high-fidelity screens of the core worlds. Kai coughed, waving the acrid smoke away from his face. He checked the display on his wrist. It read 42. 42 civilians huddled in the transport skiff behind him. That was 42 heartbeats he was responsible for. 42 lives that the predators outside saw only as scoring points. "Get them strapped in," Kai shouted over the roar of decompression. He raised his rifle. It was a bulky, scavenged piece of hardware that looked like it had been welded together from tractor parts, but it fired hypervelocity kinetic slugs that could punch through light armor. He did not fire yet. He waited. Through the smoke, the first silhouette emerged. It was tall, nearly 7 feet, encased in sleek, iridescent armor that shifted colors like oil on water. The predator did not run. It stalked. It held a weapon that looked more like a ceremonial spear than a gun. But Kai knew the tip generated a plasma edge hot enough to carve through bulkhead doors. A small drone hovered near the predator's head, its single red lens focused on the alien's mask. They were filming the entrance. Kai squeezed the trigger. The slug caught the drone dead center, shattering it into sparking plastic rain. The predator paused. It tilted its head, looking at the debris of its camera, then turned its masked gaze toward Kai. "Move!" Kai yelled to the pilot of the skiff. "Go now!" The transport skiff engines ignited with a blue flare. The vessel lurched forward, scraping against the launch rails before shooting out into the void of space. Kai stood his ground, firing 3 suppression rounds to keep the hunter behind cover. He was not trying to win. He was trying to buy seconds. More drones poured in through the breach, their buzzing rising to a fever pitch. They ignored the escaping ship. The skiff was low-value cargo. Women and children did not fetch a high price on the entertainment index. But a Black Ops soldier who fought back. That was premium content. Kai scrambled backward, hitting the manual override for the blast door. The heavy Durasteel slab groaned and slammed down, sealing him off from the hunter. He could hear the plasma spear sizzling against the metal on the other side, beginning to cut. He turned and ran, his breath ragged in his throat. He had been doing this for 10 years. He was 32 years old, but his knees felt 50, and his soul felt like it had been ground down to dust. By the time Kai reached the secondary hangar and boarded his own interceptor, the raid was effectively over. The predators had taken what they came for. He saw the tally on the colony's public screens as he lifted off. 12 captures. 4 casualties. The station fell away beneath him, a rotating drum of steel against the star field. Then, the sky above the station lit up. It was not a weapon. It was a projection. A massive holographic interface unfurled across the sector, visible to every ship and station in the system. The symbol of the Predator Coalition, a stylized weeping eye, pulsed in crimson light. A voice, synthesized and deep, boomed over every open frequency. "The season is open," the voice declared. Kai slammed his fist against his console. He muted the audio, but the text scrolled across his dashboard. It listed the new bounty tiers. A healthy human male, working age, 5,000 credits. A human female, reproductive age, 7,000 credits. A resistant combatant, 20,000 credits. They were not just hunting, they were shopping. 2 days later, the atmosphere on the Provisional Council ship Liberty was thick enough to choke on. The vessel was a converted luxury liner, its gold-plated ballrooms now filled with refugees, makeshift medical tents, and the shouting of desperate politicians. Kai Ren stood in the back of the observation gallery, arms crossed over his chest. He had not slept in 30 hours. He watched the airlock cycle. The human delegates went silent as the guest arrived. Saralith Voss stepped onto the deck. She did not look like she belonged in a war zone. She was tall, slender, and terrifyingly composed. Her skin was the color of moonlight on snow, pale and luminous, and her eyes were a deep, solid violet without pupils. She wore the formal robes of her empire, layers of silver and gray fabric that seemed to float around her without gravity. She was an observer diplomat from the Ethelgard hegemony, one of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. To the humans in the room, she looked like a statue carved from ice. She walked past the line of grime-stained human guards without blinking. Her movement was fluid, precise, and completely devoid of fear. A low murmur ran through the crowd. "She is one of them," a man whispered near Kai. "She is worse." A woman replied, "Her people buy the recordings. They watch us die while they drink their wine." Kai watched her closely. He looked for the telltale signs of arrogance he had seen in so many alien dignitaries before. He expected a sneer, a look of pity, or a recoil from the smell of unwashed bodies and burnt circuitry. Saralith showed none of it. She stopped in the center of the room and bowed her head slightly to the council president, a weary man named Holloway who looked like he was holding himself together with caffeine and panic. "I am Saralith Voss," she said. Her voice was melodic, translated instantly by the silver collar around her neck into perfect, unaccented trade English. "I have been sent by the hegemony to observe the current instability in this sector." "Instability?" Kai muttered to himself. "That is a nice word for slaughter." President Holloway stepped forward, wiping sweat from his forehead. "We welcome you, Diplomat Voss," Holloway said, his voice trembling. "But we do not need observation. We need shields. We need ammunition. We need your government to enforce the treaties that forbid sentient hunting." Saralith raised her head. Her violet eyes scanned the room, landing briefly on Kai before moving on. "My government maintains strict neutrality," Saralith said. "We cannot intervene in the internal cultural practices of the Predator Coalition. However, I am authorized to document any violations of Galactic Standard Protocol." "Protocol," someone shouted from the back. "They are skinning us alive and you talk about protocol." Saralith did not flinch. She turned toward the shout. "If you wish to survive," she said, her voice cool and sharp, "you will need more than anger. You will need leverage. I am here to determine if you possess any—" The room erupted into shouting. Kai turned and walked out. He had seen enough. She was just another vulture, dressed in silk, come to watch the carcass rot. Saralith waited until the reception was over before she moved. She declined the offer of a grand suite, accepting a small, functional cabin near the engineering deck. She waited for the ship's artificial night cycle to begin. When the lights dimmed to a dull red, she slipped out of her quarters. She did not wear her formal robes. She wore a dark, form-fitting bodysuit that absorbed light, and she moved with a silence that no diplomat should possess. She made her way to the lower cargo hold, where the air recyclers hummed loudly enough to mask a conversation. A figure waited in the shadows. It was a Tralaxian trader, a hunchbacked creature with 4 arms and a nervous twitch. You are late, the Tralaxian hissed. I was detained by the welcome ceremony, Saralith said. She kept her distance. Do you have it? The trader held out a data chip. This cost me 3 contacts, the trader said. If the coalition finds out I pulled these financial records, they will hunt me for sport. Saralith took the chip and slid it into a hidden port on her wrist. If the coalition finds out, she said, I will ensure they are too busy to chase you. She projected a small holographic display from her gauntlet. Streams of data scrolled past, banking codes, transaction timestamps, routing numbers. She was not here to observe. She was here to hunt the hunters. She knew the predator raids were not just random acts of violence. They were too organized, too well-funded. Someone was paying for the fuel, the drones, the hyperlane access. Someone was making a fortune off the broadcasts. She saw names she recognized, shell corporations registered on neutral worlds, investment firms in her own hegemony. Her jaw tightened. It was as she suspected. The rot went deep. You see? The trader asked. It is a web. You cannot cut it. I do not intend to cut it, Saralith said, closing the display. I intend to burn it. She turned to leave, but the exit was blocked. Kai Ren stood in the doorway. He was not wearing his armor now, just a gray flight suit and a holster on his hip. He looked tired, but his eyes were sharp. I knew the diplomat act was too stiff. Kai said. Saralith did not reach for a weapon. She stood perfectly still. You are following me. Captain Ren, she said. I am head of security for this sector, Kai said. It is my job to follow strange women who sneak into cargo holds to meet with black market smugglers. He stepped closer. The hum of the recyclers seemed to get louder. Who are you really? Kai asked. You talk like a diplomat, but you move like a soldier, and you are buying data that no observer needs. I am exactly what I said I am, Saralith replied. I am looking for the truth. The truth is simple, Kai said. He spat on the deck. Your people are rich. My people are dying. The predators are the dogs, but you are the ones holding the leash. You supply them. You trade with them. I bet half the tech they use to track us comes from your factories. Saralith's eyes narrowed. You confuse indifference with malice, she said. My people are not your enemy. We are paralyzed by our own bureaucracy. That is a convenient excuse, Kai snapped. It is not an excuse, Saralith said, her voice dropping an octave. It is a diagnosis. You humans are so busy fighting each other that you make easy prey. You have 12 different governments for one colony. Your senators sell each other out for safety. You demand help, but you cannot even agree on who speaks for you. Kai stepped into her personal space. He towered over her, but she did not back down. She tilted her chin up, meeting his gaze. We fight because we are free, Kai said. You fight because you are chaotic, Saralith countered. And chaos is tasty. It sells tickets. Kai laughed, a harsh, barking sound. So that is it, he said. You are just a critic, here to review the performance. I am here to see if the performance can be changed, Saralith said. There was a moment of silence between them. It was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of two predators circling each other. Kai looked at her, really looked at her, and for a second, he saw the exhaustion behind the violet eyes. She was hiding something. Before he could push her, the ship's intercom crackled. Attention. All senior staff to the main briefing room. Senator Vane has convened an emergency session. Kai stepped back. This is not over, he said. I suspect it has barely begun, Saralith replied. The briefing room was crowded. Senator Vane stood at the head of the table. He was a large man with a flushed face and a uniform that had too many medals for a man who had never seen a front line. Sarilith stood near the wall, her silver collar humming softly. Beside her floated a small, spherical drone, her personal AI assistant and translator. "We must negotiate," Vane bellowed, slamming his hand on the table. "We must offer them a tribute, a designated zone where they can hunt criminals. It is the only way to save the core population." The room broke into arguments. Kai stood in the corner, shaking his head. Sarilith stepped forward. The room quieted. They were all curious about the alien woman. "Senator," Sarilith said. Her translator drone glowed blue. "Offering a predator a taste of blood only teaches it that you are made of meat." Vane turned purple. "I will not be lectured by an outsider," he shouted. "My strategy is built on centuries of diplomatic nuance. I am a shepherd protecting his flock." Sarilith sighed. She murmured something in her native tongue, a complex phrase involving the density of planetary gas giants. The translator drone beeped. It spun toward the senator and spoke in a cheerful, loud voice. The diplomat observes that the senator is a bloated gas sack whose primary output is methane and hot air. The room went dead silent. Vane's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Kai Ren, standing in the back, snorted. Then he chuckled. Then he laughed out loud. The tension in the room snapped. A few other soldiers started laughing. Even President Holloway cracked a smile. Sarilith looked at her drone. She tapped it with one long finger. "That was a mistranslation," she said calmly. "I believe it was accurate to the subtext." The drone chirped, for the first time. Sarilith's lips quirked upward. It was a tiny, almost invisible smile, but Kai saw it. She was not just an ice queen. She had teeth. The laughter died instantly when the red alert sirens began to wail. "Hull breach on Deck 4, the computer announced. Hostiles detected. It was not a full assault. It was a micro-raid. A small boarding party of predators had used a stealth pod to latch onto the hull. They were not here to destroy the ship. They were here to grab a few trophies and leave, to terrorize the leadership." Kai was moving before the announcement finished. "Security teams." "On me!" he roared, drawing his weapon. Sarilith did not stay behind. She pulled up the hem of her robes and ran, keeping pace with the soldiers. "Stay back! Diplomat!" Kai yelled at her. "Deck 4 is the nursery," Sarilith shouted back. Kai's blood ran cold. The refugee children. They burst into the corridor leading to Deck 4. The air was filled with smoke and the smell of ozone. 3 predators were advancing down the hall. They were huge, their armor scraping the ceiling. They fired plasma bolts that melted the walls. The human guards fired back, but their bullets sparked harmlessly off the predators' energy shields. One of the predators kicked open the door to the nursery. Screams erupted from inside. Kai was too far away. He raised his rifle, but he had no clear shot without risking the civilians. "No!" he shouted. Sarilith sprinted past him. She did not have a gun. She reached into her sleeve and pulled out a small, crystalline device. She threw it. The device slid across the floor, stopping between the predators and the children. Sarilith shouted a command in her language. The device exploded, not with fire, but with light. A wall of solid, shimmering violet energy erupted from the floor to the ceiling. It was a phase tech shield, a technology the humans had only theorized about. The leading predator slammed into the barrier. The energy field rippled like water but did not break. The alien roared, striking the shield with its plasma spear. The spear bounced off. Sarilith stood in the middle of the hallway, her hand extended, controlling the field with gestures of her fingers. "Get them out!" she yelled to Kai. She was straining. Sweat beaded on her pale forehead. The device was not meant to hold back 3 heavy combatants. Kai snapped out of his shock. "Move!" he ordered his team. "Flank them!" He laid down suppression fire, forcing the predators to turn their shields toward him. Sarilith held the line. One of the predators fired a heavy concussion round. It hit the violet barrier. The impact threw Sarilith backward. She hit the bulkhead hard, sliding down to the floor. But the shield held for 1 more second, just long enough for the children to scramble out the rear exit. The predators, realizing their prize was gone and their stealth broken, deployed smoke canisters and retreated toward their breach point. They were not interested in a pitched battle. They wanted easy kills. The corridor went quiet. Kai ran to Sarilith. She was trying to stand, clutching her side. Her pristine gray robes were torn, stained with a bluish liquid, her blood. "You are hurt," Kai said, reaching for her. "I am functional." Sarilith gasped. She tapped her wrist and the violet wall dissolved. Kai looked at her. He saw the bruise forming on her face. He saw the way her hand trembled. She had stepped between monsters and human children without a weapon. "Why?" Kai asked. Sarilith looked up at him. Her eyes were fierce. "Because the innocent are not currency," she said. Kai felt the anger in his chest shift. It was not gone, but it was changing into something else. Confusion, respect, curiosity. "We need to get you to the med bay," he said, offering her his hand. She hesitated, then took it. Her skin was cool to the touch. Later that night, the ship was quiet again. Sarilith sat on a bio-bed in the medical bay. The autodoc had patched her ribs and sealed the cut on her arm. She was alone. She pulled the data chip from her wrist, the one the traitor had given her, combined with new data she had skimmed from the Liberty's internal sensors during the attack. She began to decrypt the files. It was a complex encryption, human military grade, but her alien algorithms sliced through it in minutes. The screen filled with communication logs. She read them. Her face went pale. The raid today, it was not random. The stealth pod had been given the patrol codes for the hull. The sensors on Deck 4 had been disabled remotely 10 minutes before the breach. She traced the authorization. It came from a terminal in the council chambers. A high-ranking human official had sold the nursery access codes. They had sold their own children for a promise of personal safety and a transfer of 3 million credits to an offshore account. Sarilith felt a wave of nausea. She had seen cruelty in the galaxy, but this self-cannibalism was different. It was desperate and pathetic. But then she saw something else. Deep in the logs, there was a secondary signal. The predators were not just buying codes. They were terrified. She found a fragmented report from a predator scout ship. It detailed a fear of unified resistance. It mentioned that the hunts were only sustainable as long as humanity remained fractured. They were spending billions of credits on propaganda to keep the humans fighting each other because they knew, statistically, they could not win a total war. Sarilith looked at the screen. She looked at the image of the predator, a creature that projected invincibility. It was a lie. They were bullies in expensive armor. She remembered Kyren's face in the corridor. She remembered the soldier who had laughed at her drone. She remembered the mother she had seen holding her child after the rescue. There was fire here. It just needed air. Sarilith leaned back, the blue light of the screen reflecting in her violet eyes. She whispered into the silence of the room. When Galactic Predators hunted humans, they were unprepared for a counterattack. The command came down from the top, signed by President Holloway and countersigned by the Sector Intelligence Committee. It was not a request. It was a conscription. Kyren sat in the briefing room, staring at the digital slate with a look that could have curdled milk. Joint Task Force. Kai read aloud, his voice flat. That is a polite way of saying you do not trust me to work alone, and you do not trust her to work at all. Across the metal table, Sarilith Voss sat with her hands folded perfectly in her lap. She had traded her ruined robes for a structured tunic of deep midnight blue, high-collared and severe. It made her look less like a diplomat and more like a judge. The feeling is mutual. Captain, Sarilith said, my government requires that I be accompanied by a local liaison to ensure I do not violate sector treaties. You are simply the leash they have chosen. Kai tossed the slate onto the table. It clattered loudly. I am not a leash, Kai said. I am the guy who is going to shoot you if you sell us out. I am aware, Sarilith replied, her tone unbothered. That is why I approved the assignment. An honest enemy is safer than a dishonest friend. They held each other's gaze. The air between them was static charged, a mix of hostility and the lingering, uncomfortable memory of the nursery rescue. Kai had seen her bleed. He had seen her save human children. He wanted to hate her, because hating an alien aristocrat was simple, but she was making it difficult. The mission, however, was not simple. The encrypted data Sarilith had pulled from the Liberty pointed to a single location, the celestial zenith, a massive orbital pleasure station drifting in the neutral zone between human space and the Predator Coalition borders. It was a playground for the galaxy's ultra-wealthy, a place where war was just a topic of conversation over drinks. The data indicated that the sale of the evacuation codes, the transaction that had nearly killed the children, was finalized there. We leave in 1 hour, Kai said, standing up. Pack something nice. I hear the Zenith has a dress code. I always dress for the occasion, Sarilith said. Do try to find a suit that does not smell of engine grease. The celestial Zenith was a jewel hanging in the void, a spinning torus of glass and gold spinning slowly against the backdrop of a nebula. As their shuttle docked, the poverty and desperation of the refugee fleet felt a million light-years away. Here, the air smelled of synthetic lilac and expensive ozone. Kai tugged at the collar of his borrowed tuxedo. It was tight across the shoulders, restricting his reach. He felt naked without his armor. He had managed to conceal a compact kinetic pistol in the small of his back and a ceramic knife in his boot. But against heavy security, he might as well have been carrying a slingshot. Sarilith, by contrast, looked as if she owned the station. She wore a gown of shimmering liquid silver that clung to her frame and trailed behind her like a comet's tail. Her violet eyes were highlighted with crushed gemstone dust, and her movements were slow, languid, and predatory. Relax, she murmured as they walked down the disembarkation ramp. You walk like you are expecting an ambush. I am always expecting an ambush, Kai muttered, scanning the crowd. Look at them. The arrival hall was filled with species from a dozen worlds. There were Tralaxian merchants in silk, heavy worlders in gravity-assist harnesses, and even a few minor diplomats from the Predator Coalition, their faces hidden behind decorative masks. They mingled, laughed, and clinked glasses of crystal. They are smiling, Kai said, his voice low and dangerous. Half the sector is burning, and they are drinking champagne. Peace is a luxury, Sarilith said. Do not despise them for having it. Despise them for how they purchased it. She took his arm. The contact was sudden. Her hand was cool against his wrist, her fingers long and strong. Kai stiffened, but he did not pull away. It was part of the cover. They were supposed to be an entourage, a wealthy human security consultant and his high-born alien client. But as they moved through the crowd, the dynamic shifted. Sarilith navigated the social currents with a terrifying grace. She greeted a diplomat in 3 different dialects. She complimented a warlord's wife on her jewelry while subtly extracting information about shipping lanes. Kai played his part by becoming the thing these people expected him to be. The rough, dangerous human pet. He scowled. He drank the free alcohol with too much enthusiasm. He made loud, biting jokes that made the elites uncomfortable. "Nice chandelier," Kai said to a passing dignitary who looked like a bipedal toad. "Cost more than a hospital ship." "I bet. Hope it does not fall." The dignitary huffed and hurried away. "You are enjoying this," Sarilith whispered, leaning close to his ear. "I hate them," Kai said. "Hating them is easy," she replied. "Using them is art." They moved toward the upper balcony, away from the main crush of the party. The music, a discordant avant-garde synth melody, drifted up from below. Sarilith leaned against the railing, looking down at the swirling colors of the dancers. For a moment, the mask slipped. Her shoulders dropped just a fraction of an inch. Her eyes lost their shine and went dark. Kai watched her. He saw the tension in her jaw. "You said you had a brother," Kai said quietly, "back on the Liberty." Sarilith did not look at him. She stared at a group of predators laughing near the bar. "Elian," she said. Her voice was devoid of inflection, which Kai now knew meant she was feeling too much. He was a xenobiologist. He believed that if we understood other species, we would not fear them. He was very young. "What happened?" Kai asked. "He was on a research vessel," Sarilith said. "It was marked clearly as a non-combatant scientific ship. It was in a neutral corridor, protected by the same treaties I quote to your president." She turned to face Kai. "The Predators took the ship. They did not want the data. They wanted the crew. They hunted them through the corridors of their own vessel for 3 days. They broadcast it on a private frequency for their high-paying subscribers." Kai felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. "I watched the recording," Sarilith said. "I had to. It was part of the official inquiry. My government determined that it was an isolated incident by rogue actors. They issued a formal protest and then signed a new trade agreement the following week." "And you?" Kai asked. Sarilith's hand tightened on the railing until the metal groaned. "I learned that neutrality is a lie," she said. "There are only those who hunt and those who are hunted. I decided to stop being the latter." Kai looked at her, really looked at her, and the last of his distrust crumbled into dust. He recognized the look in her eyes. It was the same look he saw in the mirror every morning. It was grief that had been forged into a weapon. He moved closer to her. The distance between them shrank to nothing. He could smell the scent of her skin, something cool and electric, like rain on hot pavement. "We are going to find them," Kai said. "I know," Sarilith whispered. The moment stretched, taut as a bowstring. It was dangerous. It was unprofessional. It was the kind of attraction that happened when 2 people realized they were the only sanity in a room full of madness. Kai wanted to touch her, just to anchor her, but he knew if he did, he might not stop. Sarilith broke the gaze first. She glanced at her wrist display. "The signal," she said, her voice snapping back to professional cool. "The tracker just pinged. The transaction is not happening in the main hall. It is in the Emerald Wing." Kai exhaled, pushing the emotions down into the dark box where he kept his ghosts. "The Emerald Wing is VIP only," Kai said. "Private access, heavy security, we do not have clearance." Sarilith looked at the guards blocking the distant archway. She looked back at Kai, and a small, wicked smile played on her lips. "We do not have clearance," she agreed, "but we do have a scandal." "What?" Kai asked. "Follow my lead," she said. And Captain, do not be shy. Before Kai could ask what she meant, Sarilith grabbed the lapels of his jacket and shoved him backward against the wall. It was not gentle. It was forceful, passionate, and loud. "Kiss me," she commanded in a harsh whisper. "What?" Kai stammered. "Now!" She pulled his head down. Her lips brushed his jaw, missing his mouth by an inch, but from the angle of the guards, it looked like a devouring embrace. She laughed, a throaty, breathless sound that carried across the balcony. "Oh, stop it, you brute," she said loud enough for the guards to hear. "Not here. My father has spies everywhere." Kai's brain took a second to catch up, but his instincts took over. He grabbed her waist, spinning her around so her back was to the room. "Let them look," Kai growled, improvising. "I do not care about your father's money." Sarilith giggled, a sound so uncharacteristic it terrified him. She stumbled slightly, feigning intoxication. "We need a room," she whispered into his neck, her hot breath sending shivers down his spine. "Somewhere private. The Emerald Wing has suites." She dragged him toward the checkpoint. The two guards, massive armored reptiles, stepped forward to block them. "Halt!" one guard grunted. "Restricted area." Sarilith leaned heavily against Kai, tracing a finger down the guard's chest armor. "Oh, surely you can make an exception," she purred. "We just need a tiny moment alone. We are very inspired." She winked. It was clumsy, obvious, and perfect. The guard looked at Kai. Kai gave a helpless masculine shrug, a look that said she is crazy and I am just trying to survive her. "Make it quick," the guard muttered, stepping aside. "If the manager catches you, it is your problem." "Thank you, darling," Sarilith chirped. They stumbled past the checkpoint, arms entangled, lips pressing against necks, whispering nonsense. As soon as the heavy, soundproof doors of the Emerald Wing closed behind them, the performance vanished instantly. Sarilith stepped away, smoothing her gown. Her breathing was perfectly steady. "That was effective," she said. Kai leaned against the wall, his heart hammering against his ribs, and he felt like he had just run a sprint. "You are terrifying," he said. Sarilith checked the corridor. Empty. "You held on quite tight, Captain," she noted dryly. "I was selling the lie," Kai shot back, though his face felt hot. "Focus," Sarilith said. "The signal is coming from the end of the hall." They moved silently now. The Emerald Wing was a series of private viewing salons. At the far end, a set of double doors was guarded not by station security but by combat drones. Kai drew his pistol. Sarilith raised her hand, her wrist computer glowing. "I can loop their sensors," she whispered. 3 seconds. Go. The drones paused, their lights flickering. Kai and Sarilith slipped through the doors. They found themselves on a balcony overlooking a darkened amphitheater. Below them, in the center of a spotlight, stood a man. It was Silas Thorne. Kai recognized him instantly. Thorne was a human tycoon, a man who owned half the terraforming corporations in the Outer Rim. He was a hero on the news feeds, a philanthropist who built orphanages. Thorne was smiling. Behind him, a massive holographic display rotated. It was not showing stock prices. It was showing people. "Lot 47, Thorne said, his voice amplified, "a prime selection from the colony of Jericho. Skilled laborers, genetic grade A, perfect for deep mining operations or recreational hunting." The bidding numbers flashed on the screen. The amounts were staggering. 2 million credits, 5 million. Kai felt a red haze obscure his vision. He started to raise his gun. Sarilith grabbed his wrist. Her grip was iron. "Wait," she hissed. "Look at the buyers." Kai looked. The seats in the amphitheater were occupied by shadows. holographic projections of the buyers to protect their identities. But the signal sources were visible on Saralith's scanner. She projected the data onto the inside of her eyewear. That one, she pointed, that is a quiet shell company owned by the Ethelgard Ministry of Defense. My people. She pointed to another. That is a direct line to the Human Senate Appropriations Committee. And that one? Kai pointed to a massive signal source. That is the Predator High Council, Saralith said. Thorn was speaking again. And now, for our premium offering, we have exclusive rights to the evacuation coordinates for the Aridni sector. Guaranteed intercept vectors. You buy the route, the prey comes to you. He was selling the escape routes. He was selling the maps that refugees used to flee. Kai could not breathe. This was not just corruption. This was industrial-scale genocide. I have it, Saralith whispered. I have the recording. Voice print confirmed. Transaction log secured. We need to kill him, Kai said. If we kill him, the network survives, Saralith said. We need to expose him. We leave. Now. They turned to exit, but the door did not open. Instead, the lights in the balcony flared on, blindingly bright. I am afraid the show is not over. Silas Thorne's voice boomed from the speakers. And we hate spectators who do not pay. Below them, the holographic buyers vanished. The doors on the lower level burst open, and a squad of heavily armed security personnel poured in. They were not using stunners. They were using military-grade pulse rifles. Kai flipped the table over, dragging Saralith down behind it just as the first volley of plasma shredded the wood. Plan B? Kai shouted over the noise. Run! Saralith yelled. She pulled a small gravity disruption grenade from her concealed thigh holster and tossed it over the balcony. It detonated in mid-air, creating a localized singularity that yanked the security guards off their feet, suspending them in a chaotic swirl of debris. Kai kicked the ventilation grate open. In! He ordered. They scrambled into the ducts, crawling fast as plasma bolts scorched the metal behind them. The ducts led them toward the outer ring of the station, the maintenance sector. They burst out into a zero-gravity cargo bay. The room was massive, filled with floating shipping containers. The airlock at the far end was their only exit to the shuttle docks. We have to jump it, Kai said. They pushed off the wall, floating through the silent, cold air of the bay. Behind them, the door exploded inward. 3 men in void suits flew in, their jetpacks flaring. Kai spun in midair, firing his kinetic pistol. The recoil sent him spinning backward. He hit a container, using his legs to absorb the impact, and launched himself again. Saralith was not a soldier, but she moved like a dancer. She used the momentum of her silver gown, which had stiffened into a semi-rigid glider suit, to weave between the crates. She fired small energy bursts from her gauntlet, blinding the attacker's sensors. One of the attackers locked onto Kai. A laser sight painted his chest. Kai had no leverage. He was drifting. Saralith saw it. She did not fire at the attacker. She fired at the cargo container next to him. The container ruptured, venting pressurized gas. The jet of gas slammed into the attacker, sending him careening into the wall with a bone-crunching impact. Thanks, Kai yelled. They reached the airlock. Kai slammed the cycle button. The door hissed shut, sealing them in safety just as the plasma fire bracketed the frame. 20 minutes later, they were safe, or as safe as they could be. They had hijacked a medical transport shuttle, automated and empty, and programmed it to lose itself in the asteroid belt. In the small, sterile med bay of the shuttle, the adrenaline crash hit them both at once. Kai sat on the edge of a biobed, ripping the ruined tuxedo jacket off. His shirt was torn, and he had a long, shallow burn across his shoulder from a near miss. Saralith stood by the sink, washing the soot and blood from her hands. Her silver gown was shredded at the hem, and her hair had come loose from its intricate braids, falling in wild, pale waves around her face. She looked at her reflection in the metal mirror. She looked human. She looked shaken. "We got it," she said softly. "We have the proof." "Thorn is finished," Kai hissed as he applied a numbing gel to his shoulder. "He is just one man," Kai said. "There are others. You saw the buyers." Sarilith turned. She walked over to him. She took the gel applicator from his hand. "Let me," she said. She applied the gel with gentle, precise strokes. Her fingers were cool against his burning skin. Kai looked up at her. They were alone in the dark of space, in a stolen ship, with half the galaxy wanting them dead. "You saved my life back there," Kai said, "in the cargo bay. You saved mine in the corridor," Sarilith replied. She finished tending the wound but did not pull her hand away. Her fingers rested on his collarbone. "I have never met anyone like you," she confessed, her voice barely a whisper. "Humans are supposed to be fragile, emotional, and aliens are supposed to be cold," Kai said, calculating. Sarilith looked into his eyes. The violet was swirling, deep and endless. "I am calculating," she said. "I am calculating the probability that this is a mistake." "And?" Kai asked. "The math says it is fatal," Sarilith said, "but I do not care." She leaned in. The air between them seemed to vanish. Kai reached up, his hand cupping her cheek. Her skin was soft, impossibly soft. The barriers of species, of politics, of war, they all dissolved in the heat of two people who had found the only other person in the universe who understood the weight of the gun in their hand. Their lips were millimeters apart. Kai could feel the warmth of her breath. He closed his eyes, surrendering to the pull. A screeching alarm tore through the air. The shuttle's emergency lights flashed crimson. The comm system overrode their silence. "Alert! Alert! Sector-wide broadcast." Kai and Sarilith sprang apart. The moment shattered like glass. They looked at the main screen. The face of the Predator High Commander filled the display. He was a nightmare of bone and technology. Citizens of the galaxy. The commander rumbled. "Due to recent insurgent activity, the coalition is enacting a special protocol." A map appeared on the screen. A bright red target marker pulsed over a single star system. It was the Helios colony, the largest human settlement in the sector. 3 million people. "We are declaring a grand hunt," the commander announced. "All restrictions are lifted. The planet is open. Let the harvest begin." Sarilith's hand flew to her mouth. "No," she whispered. That is total liquidation." Kai stared at the screen. The desire that had consumed him 10 seconds ago was gone, replaced by a cold, hard knot of resolve. "Thorn tipped them off," Kai said. "This is the distraction. They are burning a world to hide their crimes." He turned to Sarilith. "Can we stop it?" he asked. Sarilith looked at the data they had stolen. Then she looked at the red target on the screen. "We cannot stop it with a lawsuit," she said. Her voice was steel again. "We have to be there." Kai grabbed his rifle from the rack. "Set a course," he said. Sarilith moved to the pilot's chair. As she punched in the coordinates, she looked back at him one last time. The intimacy was gone, buried under the armor of the mission. But the connection remained, a live wire running between them. "Hold on, Captain," she said. "We are going to war." The medical shuttle was a sterile white box hurtling through hyperspace. But inside, the air was hot with fury. Kai Ren paced the small deck, his boots slamming against the metal grating with every step. 3 million people, Kai said, his voice low and vibrating with a violence he was barely holding back. "You saw the target marker. They are going to turn Helios into a slaughterhouse. And you want to use it as a trap? Sarilith Voss stood by the navigation console. She was still wearing the shredded remains of her silver gala gown, though she had thrown a heavy flight jacket over it. Her face was pale, illuminated by the shifting blue light of the star map. "I do not want to use it," she said, her voice terrifyingly calm. "I am analyzing the strategic reality. If we rush in there with one shuttle and 2 pistols, we die, and Helios dies with us." Kai stopped pacing. He turned on her, closing the distance until he was looming over her. "So we let them die?" he asked. "We let them be hunted so you can get your evidence? Is that the strategy?" "No," Sarilith snapped. The mask of the diplomat finally cracked. Her violet eyes flared. "If we go in without a plan to decapitate the leadership, the hunt never ends. We might save 100 people today, maybe 1,000. But next week, next month, they will just move to the next colony to stop the fire. You do not swat at the flames. You cut off the fuel." She was right. That was the worst part. Kai knew she was right, and he hated her for it. He hated that she could do the math on human lives while his own blood was screaming for action. He slammed his hand against the bulkhead next to her head. It was a violent gesture, born of frustration, but he did not touch her. He leaned in, his face inches from hers. "I am not a general," Kai whispered roughly. "I am a rescuer. I do not trade lives." Sarilith did not flinch. She did not back away. She looked up at him, and for a moment, the argument vanished, replaced by a sudden electric awareness of their proximity. His anger, her cold resolve, it was all energy, all passion, and it was twisting into something dangerous. "Then be a rescuer," she said softly. "But let me be the weapon." Kai stared at her mouth. He wanted to kiss her. He wanted to shake her. He wanted to drive the ship into a star just to stop the noise in his head. "Compromise," he said, backing away. Sarilith let out a breath she had been holding. "Name it," she said. "We do both," Kai said. "We split the objective. I take a ground team and we extract the civilians from the main settlement. We make noise. We draw the hunters to us. And I?" Sarilith asked. "While they are busy trying to kill me," Kai said. "You infiltrate the planetary broadcast array. You plant the hijack device. We do not just record them. We broadcast their cruelty live to the entire galaxy. We strip them of their myth." Sarilith nodded slowly. "High risk," she said. "Extremely," Kai agreed. "We need a team, a fast one, and we need a bigger ship." They found the ship in the shadow of a decommissioned mining station 3 sectors away. It was called the Rusty Valkyrie, a patchwork freighter that looked like it was held together by duct tape and prayers. The pilot was hanging upside down from the landing gear when they arrived. "Zrix," Kai called out. The pilot dropped to the floor with a wet slap. Zrix was a geodite, a reptilian species with green pebbled skin and eyes that moved independently of each other. He wore a grease-stained vest and a grin that showed too many teeth. "Captain Wren," Zrix chirped. His voice sounded like gravel in a blender. "I heard you were dead. I won 50 credits. I am not dead," Kai said. Zrix looked disappointed. "I will have to pay it back," he muttered. "Who is the tall drink of liquid nitrogen?" "This is Sarilith," Kai said. "We need a ride. Helios. Fast." Zrix laughed. "Helios? The colony marked for the Grand Hunt? No thank you. I am allergic to plasma spears." "We are paying," Sarilith said. She tossed a credit chip to the lizard. Zrix caught it, checked the amount, and his independent eyes both widened in unison. "Welcome aboard," Zrix said. "Please keep your arms and legs inside the vehicle at all times, mostly because the hull integrity is questionable." The team was not just Zrix. Inside the ship, Sitting in the mess hall nursing a cup of synthetic tea was Senator Valerius. Valerius was the disgraced senator from the Liberty, the one who had tried to sell out the evacuation routes, but who had turned double agent for the resistance after Sarilith blackmailed him. He was a small, nervous man who sweated profusely, but he had a talent for bureaucratic chaos. "I should be in witness protection," Valerius moaned as Kai and Sarilith entered. "Not a suicide mission." "You are the distraction," Kai told him. "You have the access codes for the planetary defense grid. You are going to lower the shields in the eastern sector to let us in, then raise them again to trap the Predator landing craft." "I am going to die," Valerius said. The ship's intercom crackled to life. It was not Zrix. It was a smooth, sultry female voice. "Oh, stop whining, Valerius," the voice said. "It is terribly unattractive. The tension is palpable enough without your fear pheromones ruining the mood." "Who is that?" Sarilith asked, looking at the ceiling. "That is Vesper," Kai sighed. "The ship's AI, Vesper." The AI continued, sounding delighted. "And might I say, Captain Wren, the sexual tension between you and the diplomat is registering at off-the-chart levels. It is just like episode 400 of the Duchess of Andromeda. Are you going to kiss before or after the near-death experience?" "Focus." "Vesper," Kai growled. "I am focusing." Vesper purred. "I am focusing on the romance." The approach to Helios was a descent into hell. The planet was burning. From the cockpit of the rusty Valkyrie, they could see the fires spreading across the dark side of the world. The Predator ships hung in low orbit, jagged silhouettes against the glow of the destruction. They were not just bombing. They were deploying drop pods, hundreds of them, raining down like metal hail. "Zrix, get us under the radar," Kai shouted over the roar of the atmospheric entry. "Holding on to your butts," Zrix yelled. The lizard pilot threw the freighter into a corkscrew dive that made the artificial gravity generator whine in protest. They punched through the cloud layer, skimming the tops of the burning forests. "Drop zone in 30 seconds, Vesper announced. "And may I add, if we die, I never got to see the season finale." Sarilith stood by the airlock, checking the seals on her environmental suit. She looked at Kai. He was loading a fresh magazine into his assault rifle. "The plan stands," she said. "I go for the tower. You hold the line." Kai looked at her. The humor and the anger were gone. There was only fear, the cold, rational fear of losing something he had just found. "Do not get caught," Kai said. "Do not get killed." Sarilith replied. The ramp dropped. The ground war was chaos. The main settlement of Helios Prime was a maze of prefabricated structures, now half collapsed and wreathed in smoke. The civilians were huddled in the central square, surrounded by a thin perimeter of colonial militia who were vastly outgunned. Kai hit the ground running, leading a small team of volunteer fighters they had picked up at the mining station. "Suppression fire," Kai roared. He opened up on the nearest Predator squad. The aliens were tall, terrifying figures in the smoke, their plasma spears cutting through the militia's cover like paper. But they were arrogant. They did not expect heavy resistance. Kai's kinetic rounds punched through the shield of the lead hunter, sending the alien sprawling. "Move," Kai signaled to the civilians. "Get to the underground tunnels." Meanwhile, 3 kilometers to the north, Sarilith was running. She was alone. She moved through the burning industrial district, heading for the primary communications spire. The air was toxic with smoke, but her mask filtered it out. She reached the base of the spire. It was guarded. 2 Predators stood at the entrance. They were different from the ones Kai was fighting. These were elites, honor guards. Their armor was etched with gold, and they carried heavy disruptor cannons. Sarilith shrank back into the shadows. She had a pistol, but against that armor, it was useless. "Vesper," she whispered into her comms. "Can you hack the door?" "Negative, darling," the AI replied. "That system is air-gapped. You have to touch it." Sarilith closed her eyes. She reached deep into her mind, accessing a mental discipline she had been taught since birth but forbidden to use by hegemony law. It was the Ethel Guard, the light of will. She stepped out of the shadows. The predators turned, raising their cannons. Sarilith did not raise her hands. She screamed, a sound of pure, concentrated will. Her skin began to glow. It was not technology, it was biology. The bioluminescent cells in her blood, usually dormant, flared to life, fed by the adrenaline and her psychic focus. A shimmering, hard light armor formed around her body, translucent and radiant, shaped by her own mind. The predators fired. The plasma bolts hit the hard light and scattered like water hitting a hot pan. Sarilith sprinted forward. She moved faster than a human, faster than a machine. She was a blur of violet light. She did not have a weapon, so she made one. A blade of pure photonic energy extended from her wrist. She struck the first predator, the blade slicing through the gold-etched armor and the flesh beneath. The alien fell. The second predator swung a massive fist. Sarilith ducked, the wind of the blow whipping her hair. She thrust her palm forward, releasing a concussive blast of light that threw the massive alien backward into the steel door. The door crumpled. Sarilith dropped to her knees, the light fading. The effort cost her. Her vision blurred. Using the Ethel Guard burned calories at a fatal rate. She gasped for air, forcing herself to stand. She entered the tower. Back in the square, the battle was turning. The predators were adapting. They had pinpointed Kai's position and were closing in with a coordinated flank. Kai was behind a crumbled concrete wall, firing blindly. His ammo counter read 0. He slapped a fresh clip in. "Valerius!" he shouted into the comms. "Where are those shields? Working on it!" the senator screamed, the sound of explosions in the background. "I am pressing buttons. I do not know what half of them do." Suddenly, a shadow fell over Kai. A predator landed directly in front of him. It was massive, a giant among giants, wearing a cape made of synthetic weave that shimmered like oil. Kai rolled backward as the plasma spear slammed into the ground where his head had been. He fired a burst into the alien's chest, but the energy shield absorbed it all. The predator backhanded him. The blow sent Kai flying across the square. He hit a pile of rubble and felt his ribs crack. His rifle skittered away into the darkness. He tried to stand, but his legs would not cooperate. He coughed, tasting blood. The predator walked toward him slowly. It reached up and detached its mask. The face beneath was nightmare fuel. Mandibles, wet skin, eyes like black beads. It raised the spear for the killing strike. Kai looked up, defiant to the end. "Do it, you ugly bastard," Kai spat. Suddenly, the air shrieked. A beam of violet light struck the predator's spear, shattering the weapon into molten slag. Sarilith stood on the roof of the overlook, her hand extended, the last of her light armor fading from her skin. The predator roared and turned toward her. "Wait!" The shout did not come from Kai or Sarilith. It came from the predator. The alien dropped the shattered remains of its spear. It fell to its knees, its 4 hands raised in a gesture of surrender. "Asylum," the predator croaked. The translator on its neck struggled with the guttural sounds. "I claim asylum." Kai stared. Sarilith froze. "What?" Kai wheezed. The predator looked at Sarilith, its black eyes wide with terror. You used the light," the predator said. "The masters said the light was extinct." "Who are you?" Sarilith demanded, jumping down from the roof to stand beside Kai. I am Kurg, the alien said. We are not hunters. We are slaves. The Council. The Council holds the kill switches in our brains, but if we do not hunt, they detonate. Kurg pointed to a scar on the back of his neck. They watch us, Kurg said. They feed us fear. They tell us humans are a virus. But you fight with the light. The prophecy says the light breaks the chains. Sarilith looked at Kai. The broadcast, she said. I planted the device. It is recording now. She tapped her wrist. Speak, she ordered Kurg. Tell them. Kurg looked into the small drone hovering near Sarilith. My name is Kurg, the Predator said, his voice being beamed to every screen in the quadrant. The hunt is a lie. We are forced to kill. The profits go to the High Council. The suffering is the currency. We are all prey. The reaction was instantaneous. High above the planet, the Predator command ship received the broadcast. The High Commander watched Kurg's confession. He did not panic. He simply pressed a button. On the ground, Kurg convulsed. The implant in his neck beeped once. No, Sarilith screamed. She threw up a shield, but it was too late. Kurg's head exploded in a spray of blue gore. The signal cut out, but it had been enough. 30 seconds of truth. 30 seconds that proved the monsters were victims too. Kai pulled himself up, using the wall for support. We have to go, he said. They will glass the planet now. The sky turned red. The Predator ships were charging their main cannons for orbital bombardment. Zrix! Kai yelled. Extraction! Now! The rusty Valkyrie swooped down from the smoke, its cargo bay doors open. They made it off the surface seconds before the first megaton blasts turned the colony into a crater. They watched the destruction from the viewport as they broke orbit. The silence on the bridge was heavy. We lost the colony, Kai said softly. We saved the truth, Sarilith said, but the price was coming due. Vesper's voice broke the silence. She sounded serious for the first time. Incoming transmission, she said. Priority 1. Origin. Ethelgard Hegemony High Command. Put it on, Sarilith said. The hologram of an Ethelgard elder appeared. He looked ancient and furious. Diplomat Voss, the elder said. You are hereby stripped of your rank and citizenship. You are declared a terrorist and an enemy of the hegemony. The broadcast you facilitated has destabilized the galactic economy. You are to surrender immediately for execution. Sarilith stood tall. I will not surrender, she said. Then you will be hunted by your own kind, the elder said. The transmission ended. Sarilith slumped against the console. She had lost everything, her home, her name, her people. Kai stepped forward. He activated the general frequency, the open channel used by smugglers, rebels, and the scattered human fleets. This is Captain Kai Ren, he said. His voice was rough, battered, but unbroken. I am speaking to anyone who is listening. The Ethelgard government calls Sarilith Voss a terrorist. I call her the only person who had the guts to show you the truth. He looked at Sarilith. She is under my protection, Kai said. If you want her, come and get us. But bring more ships. He cut the feed. They ran. They pushed the rusty Valkyrie engines past the red line, jumping through 3 unstable wormholes until they reached the graveyard sector, a region of space filled with the drifting hulks of ancient starships. They docked with a derelict Ark ship, a massive vessel from the first human diaspora, dead and cold for centuries. Zrix and Valeria stayed on the Valkyrie to make repairs. Kai and Sarilith went deep into the Ark ship, finding a hydroponics bay that still had emergency power and a functioning heater. The room was dim, lit only by the faint green glow of the surviving plants. Sarilith sat on a metal crate. She was shaking. The adrenaline of the battle and the use of the light had left her hollowed out. I am a traitor, she whispered. I have nothing left. Kai walked over to her. He knelt down so he was eye level with her. He was bruised, his face cut, his ribs screaming with pain, but he did not care. You have the truth, Kai said, and you have us. Sarilith looked at him. Tears pooled in her violet eyes the first time he had seen her cry. I was so afraid. She confessed. When Kurg died, I thought we were next. We might be, Kai said. Tomorrow might kill us. He reached out and took her hand. But we are not dead yet. The touch was the spark, the restraint they had maintained through the arguments, the battles, the politics. It snapped. Sarilith pulled him toward her. It was not a gentle kiss. It was desperate. It was a collision of two people trying to prove they were alive. Kai stood, pulling her up with him. Her arms went around his neck, her fingers tangling in his hair. He kissed her hard, tasting the salt of her tears and the metallic tang of blood on his own lip. She made a sound, a low keen of need, and pressed her body against his. The armor and flight suits were barriers they frantically tried to remove. They stumbled backward against the wall. Kai lifted her, her legs wrapping around his waist. Sarilith. He groaned against her neck. Don't talk, she whispered fiercely. Just be here. Make this real. There was no strategy now, no diplomacy. There was only the heat of skin, the desperate rhythm of breath, and the overwhelming, terrifying realization that they were the only two people in the universe who mattered. Outside, the cold vacuum of space waited. The fleets were hunting them. The galaxy was burning. But in the dark of the derelict ship, wrapped in each other's arms, they built a world that could not be destroyed. The silence on the derelict Ark ship was heavy, deeper than the silence of space outside. It was the silence of a tomb that had been momentarily warmed by the presence of the living. In the hydroponics bay, where the emergency heaters hummed a low, erratic rhythm, the air smelled of stale, recycled oxygen and the faint, sweet scent of dying moss. Kai Ren lay on a makeshift bed of thermal blankets and crate foam, his eyes fixed on the ceiling's rusted struts. Sarilith Voss lay beside him, her head resting on his chest, her breathing matching the slow rise and fall of his ribs. The desperate urgency of their escape, the violent collision of their bodies an hour ago, had faded into a quiet that felt more dangerous than the noise of battle. Adrenaline was a drug they both knew well. It masked pain. It simplified the universe into targets and cover. But this quiet was complex. It left room for thinking, and thinking was what terrified them. Sarilith traced the line of a scar running down Kai's bicep with one long, pale finger. You have too many of these, she whispered. The sound of her voice was startlingly loud in the stillness. Kai shifted, wincing as his bruised ribs protested. They are just reminders, he said. Reminders of what? Sarilith asked. That I was not fast enough, Kai replied, or that I was too stubborn to stay down. Sarilith propped herself up on one elbow. Her hair, usually braided tight against her skull in the hegemony style, fell loose around her face, softening the sharp angles of her features. In the dim green light of the hydroponics bay, she looked less like an alien aristocrat and more like a ghost haunting a graveyard of her own making. I am afraid, she confessed. She did not look at him. She looked at her own hand resting on his skin. Afraid of the fleet? Kai asked. No, Sarilith said. I am afraid of this. She gestured to the space between them. In the hegemony, emotion is considered a tactical liability. Love is a transaction. Marriage is for genetic optimization. To want someone. To need them simply because they anchor you to reality. That is seen as a defect. It is weakness. Kai reached up and brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. You just took down a predator honor guard with your mind, he said gently. I do not think anyone is going to call you weak. Saralith shook her head. You do not understand. If I need you, I can be manipulated, and if I love you, I have a center of gravity that is not my own survival. A strategist who cannot sacrifice a pawn is a strategist who loses the game. Kai stiffened. The word pawn hung in the air like smoke. Is that what I am? Kai asked, his voice hardening slightly. A pawn you are worried you cannot sacrifice? Saralith looked at him then, her violet eyes wide and fierce. No, she said intently. That is the problem. You are the king. And if the king falls, the board is swept clean. She leaned down, pressing her forehead against his. I am terrified because for the first time in my life, I am not willing to pay the price of victory, she whispered. If the price is you. Kai closed his eyes, absorbing the weight of her admission. He had his own ghosts. For years, he had been the soldier, the rescuer, the disposable hero. He was used to being the instrument of someone else's will, the council, the resistance, the mission. He wrapped his arm around her waist, pulling her closer. I am not a symbol. Saralith, he said. Do not make me one. Symbols get martyred. Men just get old. I want to get old. With you? She asked. With you, Kai said. It was a promise made in the dark, on a dead ship, with 0% probability of coming true. But as they lay there, the bond between them solidified. It was no longer just attraction or shared trauma. It was a mutual surrender. They had chosen each other, and in a universe built to keep their species apart, that choice was the ultimate rebellion. The peace lasted exactly 4 hours. It was broken by the chirping of the comms console. Saralith sat up instantly, the vulnerability vanishing behind a mask of discipline. She pulled her flight suit back on, her movements sharp and precise. Kai watched the transformation. It was like watching a sword slide back into a velvet sheath. We have work to do, she said. They gathered in the mess hall of the Rusty Valkyrie. Zrix was eating something that looked like a brick of algae, and Senator Valerius was pacing back and forth, wringing his hands. We are trapped, Valerius moaned. The sector is locked down. We cannot run forever. We are not running, Saralith said. She activated the holographic table. A map of the galaxy sprang to life. We are attacking, she stated. Zrix choked on his algae. Attacking who? The pilot asked. The entire hegemony fleet? Because my shields are currently held together by chewing gum. We are attacking the money, Saralith said. She zoomed the map in on a massive space station located in the neutral core. This is the Apex Summit, she explained. In 2 days, delegates from 300 worlds will gather here to discuss interspecies trade tariffs. It is the most covered political event of the cycle. And? Kai asked, leaning against the doorframe. And I know who signs the checks for the Predator Coalition, Saralith said. Her voice dropped, becoming cold and heavy. She tapped a key. A face appeared on the hologram. It was an Ethel Guardian male, older, with eyes that looked like flint. This is Director Chorus, Saralith said. He is the head of Hegemony Intelligence. He was my mentor. He taught me how to lie, how to smile while holding a knife, and how to suppress my conscience. He is the traitor? Valerius asked. He is the architect, Saralith corrected. I found his digital signature in the files we stole from the gala. Chorus is funneling state funds into the Predator accounts to destabilize the border worlds. He uses the chaos to justify increased military spending and tighter control. He created the monsters so he could sell the cure. So we go to the summit, Kai said, understanding the play. We walk onto the floor during the plenary session, Saralith said. We force a vote on the anti-hunting accords, and I publicly accuse the director of treason. We show them the financial trails. We show them Kurg's confession. They will arrest us the moment we dock, Valerius pointed out. Or shoot us. Probably shoot us. Not if we are diplomatic envoys, Saralith said. She looked at Kai. You, Captain Wren, are going to be the official representative of the free human colonies. Kai laughed, a dry, humorless sound. I am a soldier, Princess. I do not know which fork to use. I will start a war by sneezing on the wrong dignitary. That is why we have a teacher, Saralith said. The training montage that followed was a descent into absurdity. Vesper, the ship's AI, took her new role as etiquette instructor with terrifying enthusiasm. She reconfigured the cargo bay into a holographic simulation of a grand ballroom, complete with virtual dignitaries who sneered if you walked too fast. Again, Vesper chirped from the speakers. Captain Wren, you are bowing like a waiter. You must bow like a bored leopard. A what? Kai asked, wiping sweat from his forehead. He was wearing a makeshift formal jacket that Zrix had synthesized from curtains. A bored leopard, Vesper insisted. Elegant, dangerous, lethargic. Try it again, and stop checking for exits every 5 seconds. It is rude. I am checking for snipers, Kai grumbled. In high society, my dear captain. The snipers are usually the ones offering you a drink, Vesper said. Saralith watched from the sidelines, her arms crossed. She tried to maintain her stoic expression, but every time Kai tripped over his ceremonial sash or accidentally insulted a holographic duchess, the corner of her mouth twitched. It is hopeless, Kai said, throwing his hands up after failing to properly identify a Tralaxian salad fork for the 10th time. I am going to punch someone. I know it. You will not punch anyone, Saralith said, stepping into the simulation. She walked up to him. She fixed his collar, her hands lingering on the fabric. You do not need to be one of them, Kai, she said softly. You just need to be enough of a curiosity that they listen to you. Be the soldier. Be the rough edge that cuts through their silk. Just try not to swear in the first 5 minutes. Kai looked down at her. No promises, he said. The Apex Summit was a monument to excess. The station was a floating city of crystalline light, orbiting a binary star system. The arrival deck was crowded with delegates in robes of iridescent spider silk, armor made of gold, and headdresses of living coral. When the rusty Valkyrie docked, looking like a garbage scow parked next to super yachts, the security drones swarmed immediately. Saralith transmitted a code. It was an old code, one Chorus himself had given her years ago for emergencies. It worked. The drones retreated. They walked into the Great Hall. Saralith wore a hooded cloak over a stark white bodysuit, the color of mourning in her culture. Kai wore the synthesized jacket, his posture stiff but commanding. Valerius trailed behind them, looking like he was walking to the gallows. The doors to the plenary chamber opened. 5,000 delegates turned to look. Saralith threw back her hood. A gasp rippled through the amphitheater. The fugitive. The traitor. The woman who had vanished. She walked down the central aisle, her head high. Kai walked beside her, his hand resting on the hidden pistol in his waistband. He scanned the upper tiers, his eyes moving with the restless energy of a bodyguard. At the center of the room, on a raised dais, sat Director Chorus. He did not look surprised. He looked disappointed. Saralith, Chorus said. His voice was amplified, booming through the chamber. You have a flair for the dramatic. It is unbecoming. I learned it from you. Director, Saralith replied. Her voice did not shake. She stopped at the foot of the dais. "I am here to petition the assembly," she announced. "You are a criminal," Chorus said smoothly. "You are wanted for espionage and terrorism." "I am a witness," Sarilith countered. She raised her hand. Vesper, hacking into the station's local grid, projected a massive hologram into the center of the air. It was a stream of data, bank transfers, communication logs, and the video of Kurg the Predator admitting the truth before his head exploded. "This is the price of your stability," Sarilith declared, turning to face the delegates. "You sit here and debate tariffs while entire worlds are turned into game preserves. And the man leading this council is the one selling the tickets." The room erupted. Shouts of denial, anger, and confusion clashed in the air. Chorus stood up. He smiled, a thin, cruel expression. "A fabrication," Chorus said calmly. "A desperate forgery by a woman who betrayed her people for a human pet." He looked at Kai with pure contempt. "Tell me." "Captain Wren," Chorus sneered, "does she tell you that you are special? Or does she just use you to warm her bed while she plots against her own blood?" Kai stepped forward. He forgot the bow. He forgot the Trelaxian salad fork. "She tells me the truth," Kai said, his voice cutting through the noise, "which is more than you have done in 50 years. Chorus's smile vanished. He tapped a control on his podium. "Security," Chorus ordered. "Remove this filth." The doors on the sides of the chamber burst open, but it was not station security. The attackers wore human clothing, ragged military fatigues with red armbands. They carried human projectile weapons. "Death to the aliens," one of them screamed. It was a stage play. A false flag attack designed to look like human extremists assassinating the council to prove that humanity was too dangerous to save. They opened fire. The crowd panicked. Delegates trampled each other. Kai reacted instantly. "Get down!" he roared, shoving Sarilith behind the heavy podium. He drew his pistol and returned fire. He dropped one attacker, then another. But there were too many. They were spraying the dais with automatic fire. One gunman, positioned in the balcony, took aim at Sarilith's exposed flank. Kai saw the barrel flash. He did not think. He moved. He threw his body across hers just as the bullet struck. The impact sounded like a wet slap. Kai grunted, his body jerking violently, and he collapsed onto Sarilith. "Kai!" she screamed. She felt the warm, sticky wetness on her hands. Blood. Bright red human blood. He looked up at her, his eyes losing focus. I didn't check." "The balcony," he wheezed. Something inside Sarilith broke. It was not the cool, disciplined break of a strategist changing plans. It was the shattering of a dam, the grief she had buried for her brother, the fear she had hidden on the Ark ship, the rage at the injustice of the universe. It all detonated. She stood up. She did not need to concentrate this time. She did not need to meditate. The Ethel Guard responded to her fury. A blinding column of violet light erupted from her body. It blasted the ceiling of the chamber, shattering the crystal dome. The light solidified around her, but it was not the elegant armor she had worn on Helios. It was jagged, it was spiked, it was the shape of pure vengeance. The attackers froze. Sarilith raised her hand. The gunman on the balcony was lifted into the air by a telekinetic grip of solid light. She crushed the railing he stood on. She threw him across the room with a flick of her wrist. She turned to the others. Waves of force radiated from her, knocking over the heavy stone benches, sending delegates flying. She was a goddess of war, terrifying and beautiful. She advanced on Chorus. The director looked at her, and for the first time, he looked afraid. "Sarilith," he shouted, "control yourself. You are proving them right. You are a monster." Sarilith stopped, The light crackled around her, hot enough to singe the air. She looked at Chorus. Then she looked down at Kai, who was lying in a pool of blood. Valerius crouching over him trying to apply pressure. If she killed Chorus now, she would validate every lie he had told. She would be the savage alien. She would be the predator. The light flickered. She exhaled, a shuddering breath. The jagged armor dissolved into soft motes of violet dust. She dropped to her knees beside Kai. "Get a medic!" she screamed, her voice raw and human. The chaos of the aftermath was a blur. The human attackers were revealed to be mercenaries in disguise. Their autopsies showed predator implants. The broadcast had gone out. The galaxy had seen Chorus order the attack. They had seen Sarilith protect the council. Public opinion was shifting. The truth was out. But Chorus was gone. In the confusion, he had been spirited away by loyalist guards. The sponsors were fleeing behind diplomatic immunity. Sarilith sat in a secure holding room in the station's medical wing. She was covered in Kai's blood. The door opened. A medic robot floated out. "He is stable." The robot droned. "The bullet missed the heart. He requires regeneration therapy. But he will survive." Sarilith put her head in her hands. She shook with relief. The door opened again. It was Senator Valerius. He looked unscathed. He looked nervous. "We did it," Valerius said, forcing a smile. "The vote is passing. The hunts are suspended pending investigation. We won." Sarilith stood up slowly. She walked over to the senator. She looked at him with eyes that were dry and deadly. "How did the gunman get in?" she asked softly. Valerius blinked. "Security breach," he suggested. Sarilith shook her head. "The summit has bioscanners," she said. "Weapons are vaporized at the door, unless someone with diplomatic clearance smuggled them in. Someone who came in with us. Someone who had access to the cargo manifest of the Rusty Valkyrie." She pulled a small device from her pocket. It was a data pad she had swiped from one of the dead mercenaries. "It has your transfer codes, Valerius," she said. The senator's face crumbled. He stepped back, hitting the wall. "I had no choice," he squealed. "Chorus found me. He offered me immunity. He said if I let the team in, he would scrub my record. I just wanted to go home. I am not a hero like you. I am a politician." Sarilith stared at him. "You let them shoot Kai," she said. "He was just collateral," Valerius pleaded. "Sarilith, please, I am useful. I can testify." Sarilith drew the pistol she had taken from Kai's holster. She leveled it at Valerius's forehead. Her finger tightened on the trigger. Every instinct in her body screamed for him to die. It would be easy. It would be clean. It would be justice for the blood on her hands. She looked at Valerius, sweating, crying, pathetic. She remembered Kai's voice in the dark. Stone cracks, flesh heals. If she pulled the trigger, she became Chorus. She became a creature that solved problems with death. She lowered the gun. "Sarilith?" Valerius breathed, unable to believe he was alive. "Get up!" she commanded. Valerius scrambled to his feet. Sarilith walked to the room's communication console. She activated the wideband frequency, the one that broadcast to every human colony in the sector. "Sit," she said, pointing to the chair in front of the camera. "What? What are you doing?" Valerius asked. "You wanted to testify?" Sarilith said. "You are going to testify, not to a court, to them." She pointed to the camera. "You are going to tell every human being in the galaxy what you did. You are going to tell them you sold their safety for your comfort. You are going to list every name, every bribe, every betrayal." "And if I refuse?" Valerius asked. Sarilith leaned in close. Her eyes glowed with a faint, residual violet light. Then I will stop trying to be civilized. Valerius looked at the camera. He looked at Sarilith. He sat down. The red light of the recording blinked on. "My name is Senator Valerius," he began, his voice trembling. "And I am a traitor to the human race." Sarilith turned away, looking through the glass of the medical bay window. Inside, she could see Kai's chest rising and falling in the regeneration tank. She had not taken vengeance. She had taken something harder. She had taken the high ground. And as she watched the man she loved breathe, she realized that was the only territory worth defending. The war had changed. It was no longer a frantic scramble for survival in the dark corners of the sector. The atmosphere on the derelict Ark ship, now the makeshift heart of the resistance, vibrated with a cold, sharp purpose. Welders sparked in the gloom as technicians retrofitted civilian freighters with military-grade plating. Pilots drilled formation flights in the debris fields. The hunted were sharpening their teeth. Sarilith Voss stood at the head of the strategic table in the central command spire. The holographic map before her was no longer a chart of escape routes. It was a targeting grid. She looked different than she had at the gala or the summit. The elegance of the diplomat was gone, replaced by the austere efficiency of a commander. She wore a dark, gray tactical suit, stripped of all ornamentation. Her hair was pulled back severely, exposing the sharp line of her jaw and the faint, lingering bruise on her temple from the battle at the summit. "We cannot win a war of attrition," Sarilith said. Her voice was steady, projecting to the gathered captains and cell leaders. "The Predator Coalition has the numbers. They have the fleet density. If we trade ship for ship, humanity is extinct in 6 months." Kai Ren stood beside her. He was leaning on a cane, a temporary concession to the regeneration therapy that was still knitting the muscle fibers of his chest back together. He looked tired, but his eyes were alert, scanning the faces of the crew. "So we do not trade," Kai said. "We cheat." "Precisely," Sarilith agreed. She manipulated the hologram, bringing up a complex schematic of the Predator fleet psychology. "For 50 years, the Predators have not fought a war," she continued. "They have produced a show. Their tactics are theatrical. They value the camera angle as much as the kill shot. They rely on fear to paralyze their prey before they even fire a weapon. They believe they are the protagonists of the universe." She paused, letting the words sink in. "We are going to rewrite the script," she said. "We are not just going to defeat them. We are going to humiliate them. We are going to turn their obsession with spectacle into a noose." She brought up a new location on the map. It was a swirling, chaotic region of ionized gas and magnetic storms known as the Blind Man's Drift. "We lure their main fleet here," Sarilith explained. "It is a sensor dead zone, perfect for an ambush. But an ambush is not enough. We need them to be terrified. We need to break their morale so completely that the soldiers turn on the commanders." "And how do we do that?" asked a gruff captain from a mining guild. "We have mining lasers and repurposed cargo haulers. They have dreadnoughts. We have the Mirage," Sarilith said. She nodded to Zrix. The geodite pilot hopped onto the table, his tail twitching with excitement. He held up a small, unassuming metal cube that hummed with a low frequency. "Ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary carbon units," Zrix chirped, "I present to you the Quantum Mirage Network. Stolen fresh from a hegemony black site laboratory by our very own diplomat before she went rogue." "What does it do?" Kai asked, crossing his arms. "It lies," Sarilith said. "It intercepts sensor data at the quantum level and rewrites it. It does not just cloak us," It projects false reality. It can make a single fighter look like a battle cruiser. It can make an asteroid look like a boarding pod. It can make the empty void look like it is filled with 10,000 ships. Zrix pressed a button on the cube. Suddenly, the center of the table was filled with a terrifying, roaring image of a leviathan, a mythical space beast. It looked solid. It sounded real. Kai reached out to touch it. His hand passed through the light. "It is a ghost story," Kai said softly. "It is a weapon," Sarilith corrected. "We will fill the drift with ghosts. When they enter the kill box, they will not see a ragtag fleet. They will see an armada. They will see their own worst nightmares. They will panic. And when they panic, they will make mistakes. That is when we strike. Not at the ships, but at the flagship, the leadership." She looked around the room. "We cut off the head, and the body dies." Later, after the briefing room had cleared, the silence returned. Kai stayed behind, watching Sarilith as she continued to study the star charts. She was moving pieces around the board with a ruthless precision that made his stomach tighten. "It is a slaughter," Kai said quietly. Sarilith did not look up. "It is a victory," she replied. Kai limped closer to the table. The tapping of his cane on the metal deck was a rhythmic counterpoint to the hum of the ventilation. "You are talking about psychological torture," Kai said. "Making them see monsters, driving them into a panic so we can pick them off like fish in a barrel. That is what they did to us, Sarilith." Sarilith stopped moving the hologram. She looked up, her violet eyes hard. "Yes," she said, "and it worked. It kept you under their boot for a century." "We are better than them," Kai said. "That is the point. If we win by becoming them, we have lost." Sarilith walked around the table until she was standing directly in front of him. The difference in their height felt negligible in the face of her intensity. "Mercy is a luxury of the safe." "Captain," she said, "we are not safe. If we let them retreat, they will regroup. They will burn 5 more colonies to re-establish their dominance. They need to be broken. They need to be so afraid of the dark that they never hunt again." Kai gripped her shoulders. His hands were warm, rough, and pleading. "I want a future, Sarilith," he said. "A real one, not one built on fear. If we rule by terror, we just change the color of the flag. I want us to offer them surrender." Sarilith pulled away, pacing to the viewport that looked out over the skeleton of the Ark ship. "Surrender?" She laughed bitterly. "You think the High Council understands surrender? They understand leverage. They understand pain." She turned back to him, her voice cracking slightly. "I know how these people think. Kai, I was raised in their courts. I sat at their table. They look at mercy and they see weakness. If you hesitate, they will kill you. And I—" She stopped. She took a breath, the steel in her spine bending just enough to show the fracture beneath. "I cannot watch you die again," she whispered. "I will not. If I have to be a monster to keep you alive, then I will be the most terrifying monster in the dark." Kai crossed the distance between them. He ignored the pain in his chest. He took her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. "You are not a monster," he said firmly. "You are the woman who saved the children on the Liberty. You are the woman who stood in front of a firing squad for me. That is who wins this war. Not the strategist, the rescuer." Sarilith leaned into his touch, her eyes closing. "I am afraid." "Kai," she confessed, "if we do this, if I unleash this horror on them, will you still be able to look at me? Or will you just see another predator?" Kai rested his forehead against hers. "I see you," he said. "I see Sarilith, and I am telling you, love is not a distraction. It is the compass. It is the reason we fight without losing our souls. We will use the mirage. We will scare them. But when the moment comes, we give them the choice we never had. We give them a chance to stop. Sarilith stayed silent for a long time. The weight of his belief in her was heavier than any armor. "And if they do not take it?" she asked. "Then we do what soldiers do," Kai said. But not before. The training began the next morning, and it was a strange mixture of high-stakes tension and absolute absurdity. The resistance fighters were a motley crew: miners, smugglers, disgraced soldiers, and farmers who had never held a gun before the raids started. They were used to running. Now, they had to learn to act like apex predators. Vesper, the ship's AI, was in her element. She projected simulations into the cockpits of the fighters, coaching the pilots on how to fly in sync with the mirage projections. "No! No! No!" Vesper's voice boomed over the hangar loudspeakers. "You are flying like a startled pigeon. Lieutenant Vance, you are supposed to be a 10-megaton dreadnought." "I am in a garbage scow," Vance shouted back over the comms. "It handles like a brick, then fly like a dangerous brick," Vesper retorted. "Chest out, engines flared, intimidate the vacuum, on the ground." Zrix was teaching a group of volunteers how to operate the localized mirage emitters. "It is like telling a joke," Zrix explained, holding up a data pad. "Timing is everything. If you trigger the illusion too early, they scan it and see it as fake. If you trigger it too late, you are already plasma toast. You have to wait until they are blinking." Sarilith watched from the gantry, Kai beside her. "They are laughing," Sarilith noted, watching a group of pilots shoving each other after a simulation. "Morale," Kai said. "It is a weapon too." Senator Valerius approached them, looking more ragged than usual. He was wearing a flight suit that was 2 sizes too big, the sleeves rolled up in thick cuffs. "I have a question," Valerius said, raising a trembling hand. "Yes." "Senator?" Sarilith asked. "In this plan," Valerius said. "Where exactly am I? Because I feel like I should be in a bunker, ideally on another planet." "You are the bait." "Valerius," Kai said, clapping the man on the shoulder. Valerius turned pale. "The bait?" "You are the only one with valid hegemony diplomatic codes," Sarilith said. "You are going to pilot the lead shuttle. You are going to broadcast a distress signal claiming that you have captured me and are looking to surrender to the Predator fleet." Valerius looked like he was going to be sick. "They will shoot me," he squeaked. "They will want me alive," Sarilith said. "They will want a public execution. You are the cheese in the trap. Senator, try to look appetizing." Valerius stared at them, then let out a long, defeated sigh. "I hate the resistance," he muttered. "The hours are terrible and the benefits are death. The days bled into nights. The preparation was grueling." Sarilith barely slept. She spent her hours refining the mirage algorithms, ensuring the illusions would hold up against deep-scan sensors. She was building a masterpiece of deception. One night, finding the command deck empty, Kai found her asleep at the console. Her head was resting on her arms, the blue light of the map washing over her sleeping face. He did not wake her. He took the jacket from his shoulders and draped it over her. She stirred, blinking awake. "Kai?" she murmured, her voice thick with sleep. "Go to bed, Sarilith," Kai said softly. "The math will still be there in the morning." She sat up, rubbing her eyes. She looked at him, and the mask was completely gone. She looked young. She looked burdened. "I had a dream," she said. "I dreamt we won." "That is a good dream," Kai said. "No," Sarilith said. "In the dream, we won. But there was no one left to celebrate. It was just you and me in an empty galaxy." She stood up, the jacket sliding off her shoulders. She caught it, holding the fabric against her chest like a shield. Kai stepped closer. The command deck was dark, the only light coming from the distant stars through the viewport. "That will not happen," Kai said. "How do you know?" Sarilith asked. "Because I know you," Kai said. "And I know me. We are too stubborn to let the universe empty out." He reached out, his hand covering hers on the jacket. "Promise me something," Kai said. "Anything." "When the shooting starts," Kai said. "When the blood is up and the adrenaline is screaming, do not lose yourself. Stay with me. Stay human." Sarilith looked at his hand, then up to his eyes. "I am not human." "Kai," she whispered. "You know what I mean," he said. She nodded slowly. She moved her hand, lacing her fingers through his. It was a small gesture, intimate and grounding. "I promise," she said. "I will not let the dark take me. Not while you are holding on." They stood there for a long moment, the silence wrapping around them. It was a vow spoken in the shadow of war, a tether that would hold them when gravity failed. The alert came 2 days later. It started as a ripple in the subspace monitoring net, a burst of encrypted chatter on the Predator frequencies. Then, the news feeds confirmed it. The Predator High Council had announced the grand finale. To restore order and demonstrate the futility of resistance, the broadcast declared, the coalition will liquidate the traitor fleet known as the Exodus Convoy. The Exodus Convoy was a massive, slow-moving group of refugee ships carrying nearly 500,000 civilians, families who had fled the burning colonies. They were currently traversing the outer rim, trying to reach neutral space. "They are going to wipe them out," Kai said, staring at the screen. 500,000 people. "They expect an easy victory," Sarilith said. Her voice was ice-cold. "They expect the convoy to be defenseless." She turned to the communications officer. "Get me the convoy leadership," she ordered. 10 minutes later, the plan was in motion. "We leaked the route," Sarilith told the gathered commanders. "We tell the Predators that the convoy is diverting through the blind man's drift to hide from their sensors. It is a trap within a trap," Kai added. "The convoy will not be there. We will be." The resistance fleet moved out within the hour. It was a silent departure. Engines were tuned to low emission running. Comms were strictly passive. They arrived at the blind man's drift, a kaleidoscope of purple gas and swirling dust that blinded sensors and jammed long-range communications. It was a graveyard of ships, a place where navigation computers went to die. Positioning. Sarilith ordered from the bridge of the Rusty Valkyrie. The ships scattered, hiding behind drifting asteroids and the hulks of ancient wrecks. "Now," Sarilith said. "We wait." The waiting was the hardest part. It was a physical wait. Hours ticked by. The crew sat at their stations, sweat cooling on their skin. The only sound was the hum of the reactor and the occasional creak of the hull. Kai sat in the co-pilot's chair, his rifle across his knees. He watched Sarilith. She stood at the main viewport, staring into the swirling fog of the nebula. She was perfectly still, a statue of concentration. Valerius was in the shuttle, positioned 10 kilometers out, hyperventilating quietly over the open mic until Vesper muted him. Zrix was monitoring the Mirage emitters. "Network is green," the lizard whispered. "The ghosts are ready to dance." Then, the sensor board lit up. "Contact," Vesper announced. Her voice lacked its usual humor. "Massive signature, multiple capital ships. It is the main fleet." Sarilith did not blink. "Let them in," she whispered. On the screen, red dots began to appear. 1, 10, 50, 100. The Predator fleet emerged from the gas like sharks surfacing from the deep. They were magnificent and terrible, sleek, black hulls bristling with weaponry, moving in a tight, arrogant formation. They were looking for a convoy of helpless refugees. They were expecting screams. They were expecting sport. "Hold," Kai said into the fleet-wide comms. The Predator flagship, a Leviathan-class dreadnought named the Hunter's Moon, moved to the center of the sector. "We have their scan frequency," Vesper whispered. Sarilith raised her hand. Her heart was hammering against her ribs, but her hand was steady. She looked at Kai. He nodded. "Show them the monsters," Sarilith commanded. She dropped her hand. "Engage!" The ambush began not with a shot, but with a nightmare. The void of the blind man's drift was a soup of magnetic interference and violet gas, a place where sensors went to die. To the Predator fleet, it was just another hunting ground. The Hunter's Moon, a dreadnought the size of a city, led the formation. Flanking it were 50 heavy cruisers, their weapon ports open, their tracking systems locked onto the faint thermal signatures of the refugee convoy drifting ahead. On the bridge of the Hunter's Moon, the air smelled of ozone and anticipation. High Commander Vorak stood before the panoramic viewport. He was an elder of his species, his mandibles set with jewels that signified 1,000 confirmed kills. "They are slow," his tactical officer chattered, claws clicking over the console. "We calculate total liquidation in 12 minutes. Vorak smiled behind his mask. "Let them run for a moment," he ordered. The broadcast ratings peak when the prey realizes there is no escape. Deploy the interceptors. Herding formation. The Predator interceptors launched, swarming out like angry wasps. They shrieked toward the refugee ships, firing warning shots across their bows to induce panic. But the refugees did not panic. They did not scatter. They stopped. On the bridge of the Rusty Valkyrie, hidden in the magnetic shadow of a drifting asteroid, Sarilith Voss watched the tactical display. Her face was illuminated by the cold blue light of the holotank. She looked like a conductor waiting for the orchestra to hush. "Now," she whispered. Zrix, the reptilian pilot, slammed his palm onto the activation key of the Quantum Mirage network. "It is showtime," Zrix cackled. In the void, reality fractured. The 12 lumbering refugee ships suddenly shed their outer hulls. Explosive bolts fired in unison, blowing away the fake cargo containers and scrap metal disguise. Underneath, they were not defenseless transports. They were automated drone carriers bristling with missile pods. But that was not the nightmare. The nightmare was what appeared behind them. The Mirage network seized the sensor data of the Predator fleet and rewrote it. To the eyes of the Predator scanners and the viewports of their ships, the empty space around the drone carriers filled with light. One moment, there were 12 ships. The next, there were 10,000, massive capital ships, glowing with terrifying energy signatures, shimmered into existence. They were not real. They were phantoms of light and data, but the Predator computers screamed that they were targeting locks. The illusion was perfect. It mimicked the heat, the mass, and the electromagnetic roar of an armada that dwarfed the Predator fleet 10 times over. On the Hunter's Moon, the bridge erupted into chaos. "Contact!" the tactical officer screamed, his voice cracking. "Massive contact! We are surrounded! They are everywhere!" Vorak stared at the screen. He saw a wall of guns. He saw a fleet that should not exist. "Impossible!" Vorak roared. "Humans have no fleet. It is a trick." As if to answer him, the drone carriers fired. They did not fire lasers. They fired solid-state missiles programmed to detonate on the shields of the lead cruisers. The explosions were real. The impact rocked the Predator formation. The combination of the physical attack and the impossible sensor data broke the one thing the Predators relied on: their certainty. They are firing, a sub-commander yelled. Shields failing on the starboard flank. Break formation, Vorak ordered, panic seeping into his voice. Evasive maneuvers. The Predator fleet, disciplined and ritualistic, dissolved into a mob. Ships collided as they tried to turn away from the Phantom Armada. They fired wildly into the empty space, their plasma bolts passing harmlessly through the mirage projections. They were fighting ghosts, and the ghosts were winning. Kai Ren sat in the drop seat of a boarding pod, checking the charge on his kinetic rifle. The pod was shaking violently as it punched through the flak screen of the Hunter's moon. Beside him sat a squad of resistance Marines, men and women who had been miners and farmers a month ago. They looked terrified. Kai looked at them. He grinned, a savage, confident expression that made him look 10 years younger. "Hey!" he shouted over the roar of the engines. "You know the difference between us and them." The Marines shook their heads. "They are fighting for a paycheck," Kai said. "We are fighting for the ride home." The pod slammed into the hull of the Hunter's moon. The magnetic clamps locked on with a deafening clang. "Breach!" Kai yelled. The shaped charges blew the airlock door inward. Kai was the first one through the smoke. He stepped into the pristine, trophy-lined corridor of the Predator flagship. Two alien guards, startled and confused by the fleet-wide panic, raised their weapons. Kai dropped them with 2 clean shots to the chest. He stepped over the bodies. "Vesper!" He tapped his comms. "Give me a route to the bridge." Vesper's voice was clear in his ear. "Take a left at the Skull Collection. Go down the hall of screaming holograms. And the bridge is past the Ego Shrine." "Copy that," Kai said. They moved fast. The ship was in disarray. The Predator crew was so focused on the Phantom fleet outside that they were unprepared for the wolves inside. Kai fought with a fluid, brutal efficiency. He used his cane, a heavy rod of collapsed tungsten, to hook the legs of charging aliens, bringing them down to eye level before finishing them with his pistol. He did not just fight them, he mocked them. "Is that it?" Kai shouted as he ducked a plasma spear. "I thought you were the galaxy's greatest hunters. You fight like my grandmother, and she has bad hips." A Predator elite roared, activating his camouflage cloak. Kai didn't blink. He grabbed a fire suppression canister from the wall and threw it. The canister exploded in a cloud of white foam, coating the invisible alien. "Nice try." "Casper!" Kai yelled, putting a round into the foamy silhouette. He was dismantling their myth. Every guard he dropped, every ritual he interrupted, chipped away at the psychological armor of the enemy. They were not gods. They were just meat in expensive cans. On the bridge, Vorak was trying to regain control. "Target the lead ships," he screamed. "Why are they not dying? Commander!" The sensor officer wailed. "Our weapons go right through them. They are demons." The blast doors to the bridge hissed open. Vorak turned, expecting reinforcements. Instead, he saw Sarilith Voss. She walked onto the bridge alone. She wore her tactical suit, stained with the dust of the Ark ship. She held no weapon in her hand. She did not need one. The Ethelgard light simmered beneath her skin, making her eyes glow with terrifying intensity. Behind her, Kai Ren and his Marines fanned out, their weapons trained on the command crew. "Step away from the console. Vorak," Sarilith said. Her voice was calm, but it carried the weight of a judge passing sentence. Vorak looked at her. He looked at the Phantom fleet on the screen. He realized, with a sinking horror, that the monsters outside were her creation. "You!" Vorak hissed. "The diplomat." "I am the counterattack," Sarilith corrected. She walked toward him. The bridge crew backed away, terrified of the woman who commanded ghosts. "Surrender the fleet," Sarilith ordered. "Deactivate your weapons and lower your shields." Vorak laughed. It was a wet, rattling sound. "Surrender," he sneered. You think this ends with surrender? You think because you have some trick of light, you have won? He tapped a sequence on his wrist computer. A holographic file materialized in the air between them. It was a document, an ancient digital charter. Look, Vorak commanded. Look at the signatures. Sarilith paused. She looked at the document. It was the founding charter of the Predator Coalition's funding initiative. It listed the silent partners, the galactic powers that paid for the hunts to keep the Outer Rim destabilized. She scanned the names. She saw the seal of the Ethelgard hegemony. I know my government is corrupt, Sarilith said. This is not news. Read the name. Vorak spat. The first sponsor. The architect. Sarilith looked closer. The name was signed in the flowing aristocratic script of High Ethelgardian society. Grand Minister Alias Voss. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Sarilith stopped breathing. Alias Voss. Her father. The man who had taught her honor. The man who had wept when her brother was killed. The man who had sent her on this mission to observe. He was not just a bystander. He was the founder. He had built the machine that ate her brother. Vorak saw the devastation on her face. He moved in for the kill, not with a blade, but with words. You were never a reformer, Sarilith, Vorak taunted. You were a mascot. Your father needed a pretty face to sell the illusion of neutrality. He profited from every scream recorded on this ship. You are flesh of my flesh, Hunter. You belong to us. Kai stepped forward, raising his rifle. Shut up, Kai growled. Vorak ignored him. He looked straight at Sarilith. Join me, he offered. We can wipe out these humans. We can rule. If you expose this, you destroy your house. You destroy your name. You will be nothing. Sarilith stood frozen. The silence on the bridge was absolute. The war outside seemed to pause. She looked at the signature. She looked at the lies that had constructed her entire life. She realized that her brother's death had been a line item on a ledger her father balanced every quarter. She looked at Kai. He was watching her. He did not look afraid. He did not look doubtful. He looked at her with the same steady trust he had shown in the dark of the hydroponics bay. I see Sarilith, he had said. Sarilith closed her eyes for a heartbeat. She inhaled the stale air of the bridge. When she opened her eyes, the violet fire was gone. There was only clarity. Vesper, Sarilith said softly. I am here, darling, the AI replied. Are we connected to the sector-wide broadcast? We are live to 300 worlds, Vesper said. Sarilith looked at Vorak. You are right, she said. My name is Poison. She turned to the camera drone hovering above the console. Citizens of the galaxy, she began. Her voice was steady, broadcast to every ship, every station, every data pad from the core to the rim. My name is Sarilith Voss. I am the daughter of Grand Minister Alias Voss, and I stand here on the bridge of the Hunter's Moon to tell you that my father is a murderer. Vorak roared, reaching for his weapon. Kai fired. The shot took Vorak in the shoulder, spinning him around, but the Predator did not fall. Sarilith did not flinch. She kept talking to the camera. The hunts are not sport, she declared. They are a business. They are designed to keep you afraid, to keep you buying weapons from the hegemony and protection from the guilds. My family grew rich on your terror. Vorak lunged at her. Sarilith raised her hand. She did not use the light. She used a simple, human movement. She sidestepped his clumsy strike, grabbed his wrist, and used his own momentum to slam his face into the metal console. She pinned him there, her hand on the back of his neck. The myth is dead, she said into the camera. We are not prey anymore. She looked down at Vorak. And you are out of business. The collapse was total. Across the sector, the broadcast hit like a shockwave. On Ethelgard Prime, the crowds watching the entertainment feed went silent as they heard the confession. Riots broke out in the capital. The High Council building was stormed within the hour. In the blind man's drift, the Predator fleet, seeing their commander captured and their secret exposed, lost all will to fight. The panic induced by the mirage turned into surrender. One by one, the sleek black cruisers powered down their weapons. On the bridge of the Hunter's Moon, Kai secured the remaining crew. He walked over to Sarilith. She was leaning against the console, trembling slightly. She had just burned down her life. She had destroyed her family's legacy. She was technically a homeless traitor with a bounty on her head that would last for generations. Kai stood beside her. He did not say a word. He just took her hand. She squeezed it back. "Is it over?" she whispered. "The shooting is over," Kai said. "Now the hard part starts." 3 months later. The reconstruction of New Haven Station was noisy. The sound of welding torches and cargo lifters filled the air, a symphony of restoration. It was no longer a frontier outpost. It was the headquarters of the newly formed Interspecies Tribunal. The station's observation deck had been repaired. The glass was new, clear and unscarred. Sarilith stood looking out at the stars. She wore simple clothes, a pilot's jacket and canvas trousers. No robes, no jewels. She looked like exactly what she was, a woman who had survived the end of the world. Behind her, the doors hissed open. Kai walked in. He was walking without the cane now, though he still favored his left leg. "The tribunal just finished the sentencing," Kai said, joining her at the window. "Vorak gets life in a rehabilitation colony. Your father." Sarilith stiffened. "My father? He is being extradited to the Human Coalition for trial," Kai said. It was a unanimous vote. The hegemony didn't even fight it. They are too busy trying to convince everyone they have changed. Sarilith nodded slowly. "Justice," she said. "It feels colder than I expected." "It is not supposed to feel good," Kai said. "It is just supposed to be fair." He turned to face her, leaning his back against the glass. "So," Kai said, "the council offered me a job, Admiral of the new defense fleet." Sarilith smiled, a genuine, warm expression that reached her eyes. "Admiral Wren," she mused. "It has a ring to it. Did you take it?" "No," Kai said. "Why not?" "Because I have a better offer," Kai said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small data chip. "Zrix found something in the Predator archives," he said. "It is a map. There are colonies way out in the deep dark, human and alien, that were taken by the slavers years ago. They are still out there. They do not know the war is over." He held the chip out to her. "They need someone to find them," Kai said. "Someone to tell them it is safe to come home." Sarilith looked at the chip. Then she looked at Kai. "You want to go back into the dark?" she asked. "Not alone," Kai said. "I need a diplomat, someone who can talk to ghosts." Sarilith felt a swell of emotion in her chest. Not grief, not fear, but a fierce, soaring hope. She had lost her past, but she had found her future. She took the chip. "I am expensive, Captain," she teased. "I know." Kai smiled. "I am still paying off the damage to the rusty Valkyrie." He stepped closer, wrapping his arms around her. The station hummed beneath their feet, a living thing built from the wreckage of the old world. They stood there for a long moment, watching the ships come and go, Predator transports carrying relief supplies, human fighters flying escort for Tralaxian merchants. It was a messy, chaotic, beautiful piece. "You were right," Sarilith whispered, resting her head on his shoulder. "About what?" Fear, she said. It is inherited. My father gave it to me. And courage? Kai asked. Sarilith pulled back to look at him. She kissed him, slow and deep, a seal on a contract that had no expiration date. Courage is contagious, she said. And I think we just infected the whole galaxy. They turned back to the window, looking out at the infinite black. It did not look like a place to hide anymore. It looked like a place to explore. Ready? Kai asked. Sarilith took his hand. Always. They walked out of the observation deck together, leaving the silence behind, stepping into the noise and the light of a universe that was finally, truly, open.